Well, good evening, everybody. If you don't know, I'm Sheriff Scott Jones. Some information got brought to my attention, and had a very nice conversation with the resident, and I said, well, I think I need to come down here. I haven't been down here in a little while, and if nothing else, then just to listen. I know you guys had one of our regular community meetings towards the end of August, or October rather, so 5 weeks ago or so, but I definitely wanted to, I thought it was important that I come down and just listen and hear what the issues are for myself. Things can always be adjusted, things can always be done better, and I want to make sure that we're doing the best job we can with whatever parameters we have. I don't really have an agenda tonight. I certainly want to leave as much time as possible for folks that want to talk, and I certainly want to listen. I just want to make a couple of quick introductions. And then I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Natoli, who has another engagement tonight. So I told him I'd let him speak first, and so he can get out of here. You guys all know Captain Jim Barnes, who's going to be leaving, so you don't have to be nice to him anymore. Captain Eric Bueller is starting on Sunday. He will be the new South Area Commander, so he'll be taking over for Jim Barnes. Where's Keanu Rowe and Darren? Where's Darren? Darren, come here. I want to introduce Keanu Rowe and Darren Anderson. Get up here. They don't know it yet, but I just called them up here to tell them I'm going to promote them to sergeant. All right, with that, I want to introduce Supervisor Don Natoli.
I want to thank Sheriff Jones and certainly all of the men and women of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department and all those that are here this evening. And in addition to probably being the safest place in the county, it's probably one of the happiest places for Darren and for Keanu for the announcement just made before all of you. But again, I want to thank Scott for his follow-up. I know that Mike Rogers and others were here a few weeks ago when many of you were here for the community meeting. And I want to I'll give you a bit of information as a follow-on to some discussion about traffic, but primarily this evening, again, Sheriff Jones and his officers are here to hear some of the follow-on, certainly not only personally as a sheriff, but I think they've gone back and obviously talked, I'm sure, about some of the concerns about the deployment and response to some of the issues that you all raised. And we actually had a meeting, and I think a couple of you were there last week with some of the folks that weren't at the Walnut Grove meeting in October, but from the Sherman, Twitchell Island areas, again, I think echoing some of the concerns that you all have. And so it's great to have Sheriff Jones here in Walnut Grove. And he and I spent a lot of time together yesterday, as I'm sure some of you probably follow the news, but I think we were talking earlier, are making forward progress on that issue. And all that discussion, though, takes nothing away from the fact that the men and women of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department work very hard on behalf of all of us, and I know are very interested in not only hearing from you, but seeing ways that we can better protect the safety and welfare, and certainly folks in the county of Sacramento and those that we serve here in our community. So let me just take just a moment to give a brief update on the traffic concerns and some of the things that we talked about when we were last here, and when I was last here, and some of the transportation staff in late October. I actually got an update today. We're going to be bringing an item to the board of supervisors. The transportation staff will be, looks like it'll probably be the last meeting in January, I think January 29th, but we'll get a notice out to everybody who signed in at that meeting on the 26th of October. It will be the proposal, as was discussed, for the speed table between the two stop signs between the bridge and C Street. We're working with, obviously, a couple of merchants and business owners about the proposed placement of that, so that requires board of supervisors approval. We also have gotten word that we seem to be very close on getting the approval from the Corps of Engineers for the installation of the pedestrian signal that will be at the crosswalk there by the post office just up the road. And so that's coming. We're going to, after a follow-on meeting with folks in Locke, we will be putting a stop sign at one of the two, probably at the entryway on the north end of Locke, a stop sign there. That will be a part of the package that will come to the board, though it hasn't been decided yet as to the placement. And there was concerns beyond just immediate Walnut Grove on Walnut Grove Thornton Road, Twin Cities Road. As soon as the weather permits, they'll be putting double yellow, no passing zones, as suggested by some of the folks because of some of the concerns about illegal maneuvers. It won't cut down on all of those, but it'll be sort of a clear sign to folks that, you know, you're not going to be passing those areas, at least doing it legally. I haven't done the letter to Google yet, but I'm going to get with that out before the holidays to remind them that, and hopefully ask their cooperation. This relates to the Waze application and why we're getting such, at least in part, such high traffic volumes through our Delta communities. And one follow-on, a little further to the north, but in the town of Hood, there's been an ongoing concern, request for a three-way stop at Highway 160 at Hood Franklin Road. I'm going to formalize the request to Caltrans. We've had discussions with folks, didn't get strong preliminary indications that that was something that was going to find their support, but we're going to memorialize that and keep working that with our folks in Hood. And I know there's other concerns along the River Road. So we'll be getting a notice out to all who signed in at the meeting October 26th. If you get a ticket, a sign-in sheet this evening, we can certainly include other.
I think there is a sign-in sheet.
Okay, so we'll make sure the folks that are here this evening that weren't here for that first meeting get notice of that. So that's kind of what I had to report, and I appreciate the invitation to join Sheriff Jones for the safety portion of the meeting. I'll stay for a while this evening. I do have an obligation to be in Elk Grove about 6:30, so I'm going to leave here about quarter after or so. But again, thank you all for your continued interest and concern, and I want to just wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I'll be here for a while this evening. So turn back to Sheriff.
Thank you. Again, my name is Captain Jim Barnes. Sheriff, thank you for promoting 2 cents per hour. So if you have anything negative, they are happy right now directed towards them. So. No, but what we want to come here before, in October 29th, Sergeant Rogers in front of you, we talked about these sheets as far as what were some of the highest issues or the biggest issues for all of you in this community. We talked about the homeless was issued, I believe, is that correct? Landing 63 and a homeless issue. We've provided obviously a phone number. We provided some emails that said please reach out to us. In that time we received 1 phone call, 1 email. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but we need to hear about it for us to address it. So doing more of a proactive approach, we got our sheriff helicopter up, we flew over, we started looking for if there was any encampments, brought our homeless team down here and we addressed those issues. So it is an ongoing process. What I'm going to say tonight is not always fun to hear, right? Homeless is not, it's not illegal to be homeless, but some of the issues that come with it is what we all face each and every day. We have some areas around us, surrounding agencies, that'll push really hard, and guess what? They have to come somewhere. So we end up, it's kind of like this push and take. But we offer up the phone number, the email, because if you can email us, we can get on it. We can start getting down and getting the teams down here for that. So I just ask for that continued communication. Landing 63, if you don't mind, and it's all up on the walls also, we have it, but I'm going to ask Sergeant Rogers to talk about some of the issues, not issues, but some of the challenges facing that, areas that they're actually doing to actually make it better. And then we'll get back to more hearing you. The only thing I ask tonight is, the only people are here tonight at the Sheriff's Department. I would love to cover questions that we can absolutely respond to and handle. If we get outside the Department of Transportation, we can't answer to that. And it takes up a lot of time. So the only thing I would ask is, if we try and redirect you back into what we can definitely, our span of control, plus we can reach out to our community partners and ask them to get involved also. So as we start taking questions, if we can just be cognizant of that, that'd be great. So, Sergeant Rogers, if you don't mind.
Hi everybody, Mike Rogers. Those of you that were here on the 29th, I spoke to you about some of the problems that you guys, as far as Landing 63 that you guys identified. So what we did in the meantime in the last 4 weeks is that I know I've been approached before this meeting started where people in town thought that we conducted a raid at Landing 63. It wasn't a raid. What we did is we instituted a procedure that we used to do a few years ago, and it kind of fell off the wayside, and we're bringing it back, and that's called a dock walk. And what that is there's a set of Sac County codes that govern how docks and marinas are supposed to function and how they're supposed to be kept up. So we did that on a couple Mondays ago. You saw a bunch of cars up there. We walked down on the marina and on the docks. We contacted the boat owners. They received citations for their boats that were in violation of various county code sections. Then we went and a couple days later spoke to the owner of Landing 63, which is Todd Spear. he received a citation as well. Today before the meeting, I actually went by Landing 63 and I invited Todd. Todd's here right here because I wanted him to hear what the town says about his place so he can take the necessary steps to fix it, because I know that you guys want it fixed. So when we get to the portion about talking about Landing 63, please, let's talk about it. Let's try to help Todd so we can fix what you guys think needs to be fixed there, so you guys are happy here. Some of the other things that we did when we went to Landing 63 on that day was there was a stolen boat there. We towed that there with our marine enforcement detail. And you guys noticed that there was a bunch of boats that were parked up on the levee. They're all gone now, right? You can thank Todd for that. We went and talked to him, had a couple conversations with him, and he made it happen. So those boats are all gone. So now let's thanks, Todd. Helping us out, because we're trying to empower you to try to help you clean up your place. So we appreciate that. Some of the other things that we did, I know you guys identified the homeless issue, and do you guys remember, if anyone marked it on the calendars, on November 9th, we had the helicopter fly around town and try to survey any potential homeless camps from the air. They weren't able to see anything. So like Captain Barnes said, please email, report to us if there's any encampments that we can address, please.
Thank you. One of the things as we talk about tonight is it's not fun to hear statistics. And I know in a community such as this, statistics really don't mean anything because it's not fixing the problems that you're having either on a daily basis or you routinely see. But however, we are an intelligence-led policing-based agency right now, and we go based off of stats. And when we have conversations with members of the community and they go, I don't want to bother you. And the reality is we want you to bother us. We truly do. It seems minuscule. It may take a long time for gear, but the more calls that come in about an issue now makes us look as a hot spot and redirect our focus to get resources down here. I want to do a couple quick introductions if you don't mind, just so you know who's here. If you have a specific issue, whether it has something to do with the river, one of the marinas, we have our Sergeant Epperson and Deputy Brian Smith from Reinforcement Detail. Now going to be soon to be Sergeant Kiana Rowe, unknown destination, but she's part of our homeless outreach team. Again, it's a hot team. We didn't come up with that acronym, but it seems to fit. Stacy Patterson also from the homeless outreach team, also soon to be Sergeant Baron Anderson from POP, and he helps out with the homeless team as well. Lieutenant Jamin Martinez is a watch commander in our area, is also area responsibility for this. His work days are Friday through Monday, day shift, so you might see him more. I would say the mayor down here, Grant Haney, everybody sends him. I know you give him that round of applause because one, he lives down here and he cares about the area, right? And he's the one who keeps feeding us as far as what information we may not be seeing on this paper that we need to address down there because we understand it's a growing problem. So thank you for being here. Lieutenant Dave Beckbar is the Assistant Commander for Central Division, and then Lieutenant Jose Whitfield is the Operations Commander for Central Division also. Leslie Cole from the DA's office, I believe, I'm not sure if you're introduced, if not, I apologize. She's our community prosecutor. She's the one that will actually hit a place if it's a nuisance issue, and we love having her on our side. And she says things that makes people uncomfortable sometimes, but it's important to actually to get the job done. And then Captain Eric Bueller was already introduced. He'll be starting effective Sunday. He'll be here Mondays also to hear your voices. When we talk about some of the proactive work and what we do, and these are little, we call them little cute little heat maps and different things that look at it, but when we're statistically driven on how we dedicate resources, I have an allocated group of officers that are assigned to Central Division, and we have 6 different teams, so we have to staff them appropriately based off some of the call volumes, okay? I will tell you now, and please hear this, I do not have a group of officers sitting in the parking lot and I'm holding them back from coming down here, because if I can give more down here, I really would. Understanding policing down here is different than it is up in the northern part of my district, up in Central Division. So we understand that. But how do we go ahead and know that there's a problem if we don't hear it, right? I will tell you that our proactive policing, meaning more visibility down here and actually getting out, talking to people, stopping people out there, is 57%, I believe is what it is in here, and the actual calls for service is 43%. Even though there's a higher proactivity, there's a lower report rate, which means if there's issues going on with burglary, other things that are happening, we're not hearing about it, and we're not getting the reports. Now, I do know people still in this audience will call Grant Haney directly, and he will advise you to call the comm center and do that, and if not, he will make the phone call, put it in for us. But we do have to get in that mindset of not thinking you're bothering us. You have to just let us know what's going on so we can actually get the resources down here. We know you need resources. It's different down here. East Bay traffic is bringing a different element coming through here, and we get that. We don't want it to explode into a high crime area, so that's why we need your help on that. So as much as you can be vocal and working together with the areas that might need some assistance or challenges, work together as human beings, right? We're in the business of helping human beings and actually help people thrive, so that's important. But we need to have that open communication. So what I would like to do as far as, I didn't print out a whole bunch of them, so I apologize, but it's here, and I know if I keep throwing numbers here, you're all not going to be happy with me. But I will tell you that the actual crime rate shows that it's down. The ones are more like incomplete phone calls that are coming in based off of what we're hearing in the comm center. Now, what you're seeing day to day as you're driving around may be different, okay, and I get that. The traffic issues, we'd love to help out, be down here, maybe do some traffic enforcement, but that is not our primary objective or role at this point. It's handling calls for service, and if we could do some, obviously some driver safety, we do that as well. But if a call permits, we have to respond to that call for service. So there are ways that we are working with CHP, the South Side Command, and others that can actually, hopefully we'll work together and be more visible in that arena. But what I would like to do in all honesty is, again, we can talk about stats and how they've gone down and gone up, but I don't believe that's going to satisfy a lot of people. So if you don't mind, Sheriff, if you're okay, we open it up and see what questions that they might have that we can address.
Yeah, just before we do that, I just want to make one, I guess one reiteration is to what Captain Barnes was talking about, and that is, you know, when I was in patrol, we worked out of the Bond Road Station before Elk Grove became its own police department, and I worked a number of shifts down here. I've never assigned down in the Delta, but I worked a number of shifts down here, and one thing I noticed right away is, number one, it takes me forever to get down here, but also that the folks in the Delta communities are pretty self-sufficient. There was more than once where I'd come down here where there was somebody breaking into a barn or an outbuilding, and by the time I got down here, people were on their quads and they had their own perimeter set up. So that's great, but it's also that self-sufficiency is a bit of a double-edged sword. And that is exactly what he's trying to point out. I mean, this intelligence-led policing, it sounds great, and it sounds great for high-density populations. It may be a bit foreign to you, and it's very much a science, but there's also a little bit of art to it. And the art, I think, is what we can talk about tonight. How do we take the hard numbers, the data, the facts, the predictive policing components, and add some art to it to make sure that not only are you safe or that we are doing a good job, but that you, as the consumer, have the perception of safety. So you're seeing patrol cars, even if they don't have a need to be down here at that particular moment, you're seeing patrol cars. And that's kind of the art part that we try and adjust, right, the science with the art. So that's, I don't want you to think intelligence of policing as well and calls for service are needed elsewhere. You're not going to get services. We definitely base patrol modeling, resource allocations around it, but again, that's the skeleton, that's the bones, and there's meat to be put on those bones in various ways. But I will implore you, as Captain Barnes did, we need data to be able to make effective decisions. So you're never bothering us. Even if something is already finished, already done, you got to let us know. You got to let us know because it goes into the big hopper of information. And it's amazing what our analytics can do, but we have to have the data, right? The garbage in, garbage out. The more data we have, the more accurate our output. You don't know if something that's already done, not worthy of reporting as an in-progress crime, you don't know if you report it, if that's connected to something else, if it's connected to a series. And historically, we may not know unless the same detective happened to get both cases, but now we can know. We can know very efficiently if something's connected and who might be the suspect. But we don't know if we don't get the information. So you're really never bothering us. Always let us know the information, whether it's in progress, whether it just happened, or whether you think it's already over and there's no further danger or even no crime. Something suspicious, you got to let us know. Did you have a quick? Well, let me. I'll get to your questions in just a moment. So that's again. You heard it now from a couple of us, and I don't want to beat the dead horse anymore. But definitely, you're not bothering us. Let us know. All right. So I'm going to open this up. Do we need a microphone? Can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay. So when you ask the questions, I guess try and speak to everybody. If you're speaking to me, maybe the folks behind you can't hear it, but we'll try and repeat the questions. But before I take questions, I thought maybe if anyone had any questions for Supervisor Natoli, just because he's going to have to leave quicker, maybe we'd get those done first if anyone has any questions. All right, that's you.
Is there any resources that the county can allocate to the rural areas specifically? Not to the urban areas, but to the rural areas? Is there some kind of, other than the data that you're talking about, isn't there some kind of way that you can understand that the rural communities need assistance and that there could be some sort of budget allocation for rural areas?
So are you specifically asking about law enforcement or in general?
Well, I mean, the sheriff's department.
No, the reason I ask that is because, again, as your representative, that's part of what my responsibility is to, with my 4 colleagues, and certainly working with department heads, and whether it's Sheriff Jones, an elected department head, or some of the Department of Transportation, or Human Resources, Human Assistance, to see to it that problems, but also that there's the allocation of resources that hopefully addresses needs, and whether you're in an urban, suburban, or rural. And I represent largest part of the rural areas of the Sacramento County, and so whether you live in Herald, or out in Slough House, or down at the tip of Sherman Island, or some other river community, I recognize it's a large spread. The population may not be comparable relative to numbers elsewhere, but there still are needs, and that there's uniqueness about the communities. The people care about their communities, and as far as a specific allocation, I think part of what we want to hear this evening, obviously, I know it's a thin spread relative to, if you look at just overall deployment, and but you look at lane miles, or you look at distances traveled, and again, I guess I would certainly ask Sheriff Jones, as we've got a large area. The South Area Command is one that goes from Rancho Murrieta to the tip of Sherman Island and everything in between. Doesn't mean you only have 2 people. There's ways of deploying that. As far as resources, the way that we budget, we don't budget necessarily by geographical area. There are some things we attend to. And for example, a community prosecutor, we use that particular resource, we fund that for all communities, but it can be used in the rural areas for nuisance issues, for issues where we've got derelict properties, derelict activities that may not rise necessarily to an arrest level.
Okay.
And
has Rio Vista and Ileton made some sort of memorandum of understanding to utilize their services for crime prevention?
Where there is an interest in the city of Ileton of making an arrangement with the city of Rio Vista for their police protection. Currently, it's done by the sheriff's department when they folded their police department some years ago, and so it's under contract with Sacramento County. But it's not a whole lot different than what we have in our other unincorporated towns and communities in the Delta, except for that they're paying an additive. Here it's included in the property taxes that you all pay. But that deal is not finalized, as I understand it. There's a dispatch and a communications piece of that. I think that's a part of it. And maybe you or your staff could talk to that.
Yeah, I mean, there is a contract, but that way overstates really. The contract's never been adhered to financially by the city of Ileton. I know. Look, I had a rough night last night. I'm looking for this is. But the city of Ileton does get, as an incorporated city, they get rural law enforcement money from the feds, state. I think it's the feds. So we get that, but it does not cover, having a police presence like a traditional city like you think of. So Supervisor Tully's right. It looks very much like the look and feel of law enforcement anywhere.
I just think you guys are smart people that you can figure out some sort of paradigm shift to find monies to help rural communities that don't fit the formula that you've had for the last 5 or 6 years, and that you will find a way to make this happen so that we can get the allocation necessary for your staff or whatever the manpower we need to address the rural issues, at least in our communities here on this side of the river.
Yeah, I'm certainly open to having a discussion. Again, you don't need to hear from me, but I'm supportive of, making sure that our communities are safe and providing for, public safety, public protection, and again, Sheriff Jones and certainly his predecessors have, again, been before our board many times during my career and before I sat on the board, and in large part received strong support, recognizing at the times we've had to make serious budget reductions, certainly during the recession. But again, if he needs other tools, either in the form of people or deployment, then, you know, he certainly knows he can come to me, and you all can, you know, come to those hearings. And I'm hearing it this evening. I've heard it recently, you know, here in this room and in other settings. And again, if that's the issue, not that, you know, money, you know, is always needed and wanted, but if that's the issue, then we'll have that conversation. And we do, you know, and so I'm open to that. I don't know what all those models are relative to deployment, but I would just say this: we do approve the budget. This request covers everything from corrections to equipment to personnel, and then it is the sheriff's responsibility and certainly his authority to, as he sees fit, with the resources given by the Board of Supervisors, to deploy. And in fact, that's part of the conversation we had for several hours yesterday.
And I'll just add to that, if I could, is one thing we learned, all of us learned, but us in law enforcement were no different in 2008, 2009, when kind of the wheels fall off the bus of the economy, when we had our layoffs, and law enforcement everywhere was going through the same thing. It's how do we have the same problems, but historically, for the period of sustained good economy before that, we could always throw resources at it, right? There were resource solutions. But then we had the same issues, same problems, but we didn't have any resource. So it really caused us, law enforcement in general, us in particular, to be very introspective about how we solve the same problems without just throwing resources at it, and we became much more efficient. We still don't have the number of deputies we had before our layoffs in 2009. We still don't have those numbers. When I was a lieutenant, I was one of 74 lieutenants, and now we have 44. Similar numbers, we had 24 captains, now we have 12. So we're much more lean even than we were back then. But I would put our efficiency and efficacy as an agency overall against what we did back then. So I only say that to say that there may very well be resource discussions that come out of this, but I have a strong suspicion and belief, frankly, that some of the solutions that are going to be satisfactory in addressing a lot of your concerns may not have to do with resources, additional resources per se, but tweaking the resources that we have is my guess. But again, I like the supervisor, am wide open to having those discussions, and we're frankly, I think, as a county in a better place than we were obviously 5 years ago. So.
But if there's a rural model that, you know, again, that you would like us to take a look at or emulate, I mean, again, it's not my expertise, but I'm open to that, and I think most of you in this room know that. And again, I will do what I can to, you know, to help find the solution. So if there's a better way, and I know that there's, you know, there's a distinction between kind of what was patrol services in the past versus intelligent-led policing and how all that works, but even then, even if you had someone, you know, be very realistic, just knowing the geography, as you all know, because you live down here, but I know it pretty well from my district, is that even if you had a couple folks assigned, then in any given circumstance, if you get calls for service, you're going there, and then everything else is bare, unless you bring more folks in. And so again, and that's, you know, not my expertise, but I think, again, if there's some things that come out of this evening's meeting that we want to take a look at for Delta communities and rural communities, I'm very open to that, Sheriff.
Okay, very good.
Don.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
You know, I'm from Bethel Island. We have MACs down there, and the MACs don't just cover zoning issues. At our MACs, we can go, there's a police officer there, there's code enforcement if we need them, and Sacramento's MACs are a little bit different, but in order to unify these communities, not Walnut Grove, Locke, Hood, it might be helpful if the MACs could maybe do some meetings that involve law enforcement and code enforcement. And, you know, I know Sherman Island had to drive all the way up to the sheriff's office to have a meeting.
But the next meeting is to be down at Sherman Island.
Right,
We
but
can do that.
if you can combine this, because what's happening in Locke is probably happening, you know, it's part of Walnut Grove, and what's happening down on the Delta Loop. You know, these people, you know, we kind of know who they are just going from place to place. And so it would be, it's helpful when we're all in a room, and I know we're spread out up here, but it is, if we can communicate with officers, because a lot of it is intertwined. So but you'd have to change your MAC profile in your county.
Some of you have served, or certainly, obviously, you know, attended the Delta Citizen Municipal Advisory Council meetings, and, you know, we can look at the structure, because in other communities, I know in San Joaquin County, their municipal advisory councils have a little different role as well. And so, again, if that's something from a standpoint of, you know, beyond looking at land use items, if there is a, you know, either a regular forum for our community prosecutor, for code enforcement, for law enforcement, whoever, we could do that, and I do it quarterly, and again, not just on an as-needed basis. And so I'm, again, willing to entertain that. And if there's that level of interest, I think, we're certainly willing to take some more applicants for the, for municipal advisory council, because in some cases, we are challenged by folks who want to, even carve out the time that they do, to serve in the capacity they do now. But I'm willing to look at that, and if not, maybe there's another model too that would bring, kind of the united look at issues that are up and down the river and in the Delta and the various communities that comprise it. So that's a good suggestion, Lizzie. All right.
Any other questions for Supervisor Tully?
My issue is traffic.
Yes.
So I appreciate hearing that you're going to try to contact Waze. And I understand there have been other small communities that have been impacted by the same thing. So my first question would be, I would really strongly encourage you to do that.
Go ahead.
Because I think that's a big part of our problem, right? Is we're getting traffic diverted through the Delta that normally should be on 12 or 5 or whatever.
Right.
And I heard you talk about putting in stop signs. I think that's a great idea. What about reducing the speed limit? I don't know whose purview that falls under.
On county roadways, it's the county Department of Transportation. On the state highways, whether it's 164 or 12
Yeah.
or 5, that's the county's responsibility. But
But I understand,
Yeah.
but we go from whatever it is, 55 or 60, and then as we get closer to town, it
45,
reduces,
35,
right?
right.
So why can't we extend that a bit further out to reduce the traffic volume? And I say this, and we are long-term residents now, not by comparison, but we've had 5 accidents in front of our house. And I don't mean in the vicinity, I mean on my property.
Okay.
With 4 fatalities. And,
Wow.
yeah, and it's
where are you located at? Don't let that
it's 160.
We're next to the
Oh,
Garamendis.
next year,
Yeah.
160, okay.
And it's, it's a variety of different reasons, and everybody responds, but it still is, it's disconcerting.
Now, that speed limit, again, that would not be set by the county of Sacramento. We certainly can give our input, and as I mentioned on the stop sign at Hood Franklin and 160, I will tell you that, and some people in this room will know this, we worked for a number of years, this community, and certainly I advocated for it, and so did our Department of Transportation, to get the stop sign on the west side of the bridge.
Right.
And
Very appreciative.
But what they did when they did the first study was they raised the speed limit. They didn't lower the speed limit or keep it the same, they raised it. And that was their answer to it until they got enough public pressure from you and from others. But they didn't lower the speed limit. It was, they raised it to 35 or 40, whatever it was. And so, but I'm willing to, again, to take those requests. And again, I'm, willing to engage with our state representatives, Senator Frazier and others, and certainly, obviously, Congressman Garamendi obviously doesn't have a lot to do with speed control, but obviously he and his neighbors are concerned about it. And so we have the ability, and again, on any roads, Walnut Grove Thornton Road, the River Road on the east side, Twin Cities, those are all, controlled by the county. So we can take a look at speed limits, extending them. Last thing I would say on this, though, we can't just do it because we want to. We have to do some, look at it, because if we create a speed trap, then this, then they go to court, they throw, it gets thrown out, even if you have the enforcement that goes behind it. So, but we will look at it diligently, and I know that suggestion for different stretches would come up in the meeting we had here a few weeks ago. So I'll give you one of my cards. We can talk some more offline, and I intend, like I say, to write to the community what we're going to do with kind of the amalgamation of suggestions we got at the last meeting, and some of that involves enforcement, obviously, and that's key. But we can take a look at it, and I'll be happy on 160 to take it to Caltrans and see what they say. As long as they don't raise it, I don't want you to be happy.
The other benefit of a lower speed limit is not only more mild traffic, but Waze and apps like it use calculations of each segment's not only distance, but speed limit. And so it would also, at least presumably, have dissuade that being targeted as a route if it is going, because it would make the calculations take longer, the calculated route take longer, so that may divert them over to the freeways.
Which is, I've never seen on our section of 160, I've never seen any speed trap is not the word I want to use, but, you know, people looking for people who are moving too fast.
Oh, you said enforcement, active enforcement,
Thank you.
or people that are.
Enforcement is a much better word than speed trap. And is there some rule that says you cannot use private property to sit and monitor speed?
Are you offering?
Yes. Absolutely. No,
Scotch and cigars, too.
no, so I don't know if that's CHP.
I don't know what there is, I don't know.
Well, the highway would be CHP. I mean, all the roads in the county, primary responsibility for traffic enforcement is CHP, which not to say we don't do, or can't do it. We're legally authorized to do it, but unlike a city where the police department has primary jurisdiction over traffic, in the county it's CHP. So, and that being a highway as well, it would be predominantly fall under CHP. But
They can be pulled off the road.
Easily, they could easily be
And
on
that's one of the
private property on
problems
certain-
there, is those long stretches where you're gonna pull somebody over, you gotta.
and we have a great relationship with them, so we could coordinate, that with them, so.
No, I just, if you're talking about community involvement, I mean.
I know you guys are working with statistics and everything, but these people here all live here. Is there anybody in this room that can actually say in the last 6 months you haven't had to take a diversionary tactic to prevent yourself from getting killed from a head-on on Twin Cities or on 160 or on the levee for that matter? How many times have you seen people fly past
All the time.
buses that are letting off our kids? They've got their signs out. People just blow right past them. 3 weeks ago, a farm worker was killed, knocked off the damn levee. I mean, it's crazy. You have no idea what we're dealing with down here. You have no clue. And it's daily. It's daily. This lady has seen how many deaths? I would love to see what the High Patrol, what their statistics are, how many deaths we're seeing. We're talking two-lane roads. There's nowhere to go. You have a choice. You either take the orchard or you take the river. And if you hit the river, you're gone. If you hit the orchard, you may be able to hit through the trees, but if not, you're screwed. So, I mean, is there anybody in here that hasn't been affected?
No, they're taking a shortcut, and it's on a narrow road.
And if you look, I did it coming from Antioch. Waze is sending all these people through the Delta to avoid. Now, on where I guess it's Ileton Road, that road, the back road?
Yes.
Now they're taking that road. That road's even more dangerous than 160. Right by the Stones Ranch. Yeah, and they're taking that now. And I mean, we're seeing traffic lined up at the bridge for over a mile every afternoon. And then they try to make up the speed by just zooming down Twin Cities. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've lived here all my life. They could put speed bumps all the way down Twin Cities, and I'll tell you what, I don't know if that would stop them.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's obviously an enforcement issue, and, predominantly CHP, but that doesn't mean we're not, empathetic or sensitive to what you're saying, because we see it in several different iterations all over our what we do. So I have a very good relationship with the area chief of the CHP. I know he was at the meeting, I guess on the 29th, or at least represented.
Chief, sir, but CHP was here.
Yeah.
At the 29th. I will talk to the senior management and
It's getting worse, that's the problem, that's why.
I mean, that's what I'm hearing that from everybody. So
It's getting so much worse. And you know what? When the fog comes, these people haven't got a clue. They don't know these roads. I mean, you guys are going to be fishing them out day after day and fishing some of us out because there's no place to go to get away from them.
This is going to be a priority takeaway for me. I can't force them to do anything, but I think if I approach it at my level, straight across, I think that we can get something done. And I will. I promise you that I will do that.
Crying down here. I mean, we protected ourselves for the last year. We don't plan on you guys getting here for 45 minutes, okay? Yeah. But when someone is coming at you with an SUV at 70 miles an hour, there's no place to go. That's our major problem. Is there anybody here that disagrees? No. Right now, I think that's our major problem is this traffic.
gets ridiculous. I've seen them passing on the Meadows Bridge.
On the bridge. I mean, and you do not see anybody until you're on top of the bridge.
They're coming to stop signs. In the last couple of years, people are stopping, they're passing them right there at the stop sign. I mean, you see it every day. I mean, it's endangering you, your loved ones, your community members, and everybody else. And so,
Well, I promise you, I'll set up that meeting, and I will, at least, you'll be able to hear back what the result of that was from our end. And I'm going to encourage him, and I think that he would be more than happy to either come down directly and address it or take it seriously. But, I mean, I clearly can see that is a genuine priority issue down here, and the stakes are very, very high. So
It's not a priority.
Sheriff Jones, this is the issue down here. What's being discussed at this time, as Don clearly knows. We had this same discussion 3 weeks ago when Supervisor Natoli conducted a meeting, community meeting such as this. Of all the issues, there aren't that a lot of them, but the issues that you've talked about and that the Sheriff's Department is responsible for, this is the issue. Just this morning, my wife is driving on Twin Cities Road, and a car came by around her and passed a car in front of her with a car clearly coming in the other lane. And all she said, I would not have done that. But that's the issue. We've had people killed down here. We've had people hurt down here. That needs to be dealt with. I don't know how, but that needs to be dealt with.
I'm hearing you, and I'm certainly hearing you, and I will address it as much as I can on my end. And you'll get some follow-up as to what I've done, at least on my end. And I truly believe that I can have some influence, again, talking at more of a lateral level.
and I will assist, again, if I do that, again, if it's a resource issue, if we need to go to folks, again, I know your level, you've got that communication, but it was clear, and the officer was here for a while, but they'd had a death in their law enforcement family, so he had to leave. But it was clear. I mean, you had as many people, if not more, that evening who were saying the same thing, Sheriff.
So you keep talking about a resource issue, right? And I get that part. But if you're not here patrolling, or CHP is not here stopping, and we have accidents, our ambulances have to come out, our fire people have to come out. We're burning resources. They may not be in your department or in CHP, but we're burning resources.
Yeah, the volunteer fire departments, in which many of you either have family members or are part of yourselves on the boards and so forth, I've told the county executive, we've got to take a look at it because our rural fire departments, particularly in this part of the county, because of not just access on the local roads, but they respond to them on the I-5s, on the 12s, on the 4, on the 160, and it's just it takes those resources. And again, these are small departments with, again,
Just to say it one more time. If you don't stop the people who are speeding and doing the stupid stuff that Dave's talking about, the accidents happen. And then we're burning those resources, right? It's down the road resources. Yeah.
So are you responsible for traffic, or is it Highway Patrol we should be? So Jim Frazier, maybe we need to get involved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Frazier.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Highway Patrol. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, we don't throw up our hands and say we have no responsibility for it, because we certainly can enforce traffic violations, and I would like to think that if we saw some of the more blatant ones that you've seen and experienced and described, that we would. Our hands aren't tied to do it, but primarily responsible is CHP.
I'm Barbara McGowan. Thank you for helping me last week. And next, thank you all for being here. This is the presence that we're talking about. If you're here in the daytime, more of you like this, you are going to solve a large portion of our problems just standing like you're standing out there at the pizza factory and at Mel's, where they blow through the stop sign all the time. I'm sort of also confused with tonight's meeting already. I was here at the last meeting, and we presented all of this information. There was representatives from everybody here, and they took everything every person said, and I also noticed that this is a smaller group and some new faces, and take that information back and start working on it, okay? So the first thing that said tonight was, here's the statistics. We had one person call or email. There was no reason for anybody else to call and email. You were supposed to take all that information from here and work with it. I gave where the homeless encampments are that are sleeping on my doorsteps. I provided that information. We had 4 other people provide you locations of where these problems are. Yet, you're saying one person called, which to me means you threw it back on us as people, as the community and as the citizens. But these citizens armed you with a lot of information, and I'm not seeing any results from that meeting 3 weeks ago, because we still have the exact same problems and priorities, such as the traffic, that we had at the last meeting. Secondly, you're then asking us in regards to helping you with your statistics. I'm a huge statistic here. I live here and I have a business here. I have had 2 burglaries. Both were reported to the sheriff's department. I had 2 wonderful different officers help me. The first one, 18 months after it happened, I received a telephone call that they caught the guy. Would I prosecute? Absolutely I will. Never heard from anybody again. The last robbery was recently. Had the great officer come down. I have a lead of who possibly could do it. I have left 7 messages on your recorder because nobody answers the phone, and I have left messages. I have the person's name, phone number, and address. I don't think the address is any good, but the phone number is probably good. And I've never heard from anybody. So I am doing my job as a citizen in this community to help you do your job. So where are you?
Well, I mean, those are valid questions. And I think they're not only your questions, but I think in some form or fashion, they represent the questions of a lot of people here. I mean, clearly. I can defend the folks behind me a little bit by saying that even the captains, work in certain parameters that ultimately I or the executive staff set, which is one of the reasons I wanted to come down here, because I know that they're doing the best of what my expectations are with what the resources they have, but that's not the same thing as saying that I can't change those parameters and change those resources, and that's the reason I'm down here today.
You're working off of an intelligent statistic. Those are the words you use.
That's correct.
They aren't that intelligent, and the statistics are wrong. Because I'm a statistic for you and have gotten absolutely 0 support.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's not as much building statistics as getting appropriate data. I would venture to guess.
We don't need you to put data
I would.
anymore. We need you to show up to do something. It's that simple. It really, truly is that simple. Get in your car and send 4 people down here and help us every single day. Go out and talk to us. Come to my store and see my store and see what has been stolen, the thousands of dollars that has been stolen from me, and me providing you with everything possible, including finding the person that did it, and you've done nothing.
Okay, so I understand that. I understand the frustration, but that's not a frustration of the Delta. That's a frustration of people everywhere, whether it's in the county or not. I can tell you that, and I don't mean to keep harping on resources, because that's only part of the equation, but we're the lowest staffed agency in the region, covering 1,000 square miles. There are burglaries
But it's
that...
not working, so figure something else out.
Well, it sounds like the first burglary got caught.
They caught them and never did anything about it.
You don't know that. You don't know if they got held accountable for it, took a plea bargain, or
Then
went to
how
jail.
rude of your officer, Patrick, not to call me back and tell me
That
that.
wouldn't have anything to do with us. That would have been given to the district attorney.
Then how
And from
rude
that
of
point
them,
forward-
then how rude of them not to call me and say, Barbara, we've got it handled, we are not going to need you any longer, instead of leaving
I
me
think in a
hanging.
perfect world, that would happen. But it is,
That's what I'm saying.
there are an incredible amount of
Working, so
burglary
we
reports
need to
taken.
Change it up, and that starts with our traffic problems, because those traffic problems are bringing in burglary problems. It's all a vicious circle, and we don't have any of you here on a daily basis to come in and give your face and show that you can help us here. It truly, truly is so simple, and you keep coming back to intelligent statistics. It's not right, it's not working. Change it up.
Well, that's why I'm here. I want to see if it makes sense to change it up.
People were here 3 weeks ago, and we said the exact same thing.
We're not going to solve every burglary. We're not,
I'm not asking you to solve every burglary.
what I expect of my officers, if you call for a burglary, for us to show up, make a report, acquire and secure appropriate evidence, my investigators to do the investigation that they can. In most cases, there's not much investigative follow-up that can be done, and present a case to the district attorney for their determination of whether to file charges against them. That's my expectation. The reality of those cases, there are very few that are prosecutable, and you have some that have greater degrees of evidentiary evidence of availability of evidence than others. Those are going to get put to the top of the heap, or those that are more serious or are higher dollar value in nature. I understand you think that's a problem unique to the Delta or caused by factors, but caused by factors.
Is what's unique to the Delta is your presence is not here. That's what's unique to the Delta. And that's what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to move around and shake it up and get down here to the Delta, whether it's Rio Vista, Isleton, Cortland, wherever it is, and start letting these people know that you're here. And don't come in here causing trouble, because the citizens are proactive enough to be working with the sheriff's department that it's not good for you to be here. Landing 63 was not the only problem we talked about. We had a list. We all gave information. And I have to tell you, I'm extremely offended with you coming in here tonight saying that one person called. I believe there was over 100 people in this room, and I believe every person gave feedback to every organization that was here. And you started the conversation saying one person called. I mean, how offensive is that?
Well, I'm sorry it's offensive. It certainly wasn't the intent that Captain Barnes had. I think it was more to suggest that we need good information. The information that was presented last meeting, I don't know, I wasn't here, but I can only assume it was a lot of at least some of what I've heard tonight, as well as additional stuff that I haven't heard about tonight, but likely will.
There was a lot more.
But likely will. And I know some follow-up has been done about some of the issues, perhaps not all of them, but I don't want to convey the impression that, and I wasn't here, so I'm not a direct witness, but I don't want to convey the impression they've done nothing.
I am just here because it needs to be said, and there's a lot of people that don't want to speak up for just not wanting to. I'm already in trouble in a few places, so, one more person coming after me for something isn't going to make any difference at this point. So I will, burden saying all of this. And I'm not angry, and I am one of the top supporters of our political system, of Mr. Natoli, of every CHP officer. I have 5 police officers. I have 2 sisters, brother-in-laws. I am extremely pro-blue, okay? But where are you?
I'm right here.
Okay, thank you.
We really had a lot of reports, and those should have been fed into your statistics system.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying.
What was the question?
You reporting I'm paraphrasing, but there was a lot of things said, and those should have been fed into the system as data, as opposed to actual crime reports, calls for service, those types of things. And I don't disagree, especially in an area as rural as this area, as the Delta, where a lot of the information gets passed along informally. So there's got to be a mechanism to assimilate that into the data, as it were, to come up with better solutions. I don't disagree. And look, for those of you that don't have any reason to have any hope that this meeting is going to be any different, I would only ask that you give me an opportunity to work with Captain Bueller coming in. Welcome, by the way. And see if we can't figure out something that's better. And it may not be perfect, but I can almost promise you that we can come up with something that's better. And I just ask, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to come down here, because I have the ability to do, whatever I want, obviously, as the sheriff in terms of asset allocation and so forth. So just give me an opportunity to listen to what you're saying, to digest it, come up with an action plan, and see what we can come up with. That's all I'd ask. And if not, if you're still angry with me, let me know, I'll come back again, but give me an opportunity to address some of this stuff.
I have a question. I was here at the last meeting, but I didn't stay. I'm curious because I have a group, Neighborhood Watch, that when something happens, they email me, I email everybody back, whether it's a break-in, suspicious car, person, so we're all kind of communicating. There's a group of us. We put it together years ago when we had a Neighborhood Watch, and I used to keep in contact with Laura. And so my question is, because we do emails, I keep telling them when they email me, report it, make us a hotspot. It's not gonna happen if you don't report it. They're not reporting it. I'm realizing, I don't know when your building or your business got broken into, but it's happening at night, 2, 3, 4 o'clock at night. I will say, I do see their presence. I've got cameras. So they are coming during the night. I do see them.
See, we're just there, we're not looking.
No, I see you because you guys, whoever's coming by does flash in our court. So I do see it. But, you know, it does seem like it's happening late at night. Just heard of one this weekend. Told the woman, report it. Oh, yeah, I'm going to report it to my insurance. It's not getting reported. Is there some kind of email or someone specifically when something happens, we can email and then there's a little communication with whatever officer or department. Oh, wow, look what happened in Walnut Grove this weekend. Oh, look at the suspicious car. So when you're driving by, you say, wait a minute, I just saw that white car that somebody said whatever about. So that type of communication, because a lot of people don't report it. I will say traffic is #1 priority, but we do have that crime that's happening too.
And honestly, and I know it keeps sounding like I'm selling snake oil with intelligence policing, but just the very thing that you mentioned, suspicious vehicles, burglaries that happen within certain time frames, the ability for our analytic platform to predict areas and geographic areas and times of future crimes based on data that we have is incredible. We like nothing better than to catch bad guys. And if we have a leg up to try and do that, we're going to do it. And that will bring us to the area if we feel like we can stop that. So.
Between 2 and 4 a.m. is what I hear. So there's a little consistency a little bit sometimes, but I understand. You can never be at the right place at the right time. But yeah, if we can have some more communication to let somebody in the department know, because not everybody will report it, but if there's an email that goes out, including you, because I used to include local law enforcement who used to live here.
You keep in contact with the crime prevention specialist?
I used to with Laura Grossman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we had a meeting years ago.
Only for a short amount of time, because I'm taking it with me when I leave, but we are going to find a replacement that's going to be engaged, just as you're talking about that as well. We do have another email we will add to the board. We have a hot team one, but it's also a central prop. It's the team that would actually look at those types of nuisance issues and follow up on any abandoned vehicles and or vehicles that are suspicious in nature. So we will add that before we leave. Yes.
And just speaking to that, a lot of times cell phone reception around here, as you may know, is a serious problem.
I noticed that outside.
And I had to call you guys, thank you, very responsive this weekend, twice in the same day. I couldn't get, when I had you on the phone, I couldn't get online to tell you the address of the place. And when I was online, I had no cell phone. So email as an alternative might be great for some areas that have no phone system at all.
And also, if I may interject too, also, you understand the Sheriff's Department has the text 911 also ability that we've implemented with other agencies. So if you can't make a quick phone call, but you can text it, the text 911 will go straight to the comm center and they will respond. We can start.
That's just in the last few months.
Yes.
In that statistic of only one phone call in the last 3 weeks, are you including 311 calls and 874-5115 calls?
So the 5115 calls would go to our comm center, so those would likely be included. The 311 calls go to the county and get routed from the county. So if it's a law enforcement issue, it does get routed to us eventually, but not directly.
Okay, because I know myself personally, I've called both of those phone numbers on one issue probably 5-6 times. That keeps occurring night after night after night. I've called probably 7-8 times in the last 2 weeks. either 311, a barking dog that all night long, just over and over again, wakes the whole neighborhood up. And I've called animal control, and they say call you guys and report it as a noise complaint.
If I could just clear up maybe some miscommunication. When we spoke earlier about the one phone call and the one email, that was strictly to when, if you guys remember when I was here at the last meeting, we wrote down the phone number and email address for the central hot team. And that's strictly for homeless issues. So when Captain Barnes said there was one phone call received, that was strictly, this voicemail was strictly for a homeless issue. We're not talking about nobody called, or there was only one call for the sheriff because of a law enforcement emergency. That is not what we're talking about. Maybe I'd like to apologize for whatever miscommunication we had. The one phone call and the one email was strictly between the last meeting and this meeting for homeless issues only. That's all.
And please, if you can, put them in your phone so you have them readily available, and that way it goes right to our division and will not get filtered in. So, thanks, Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
I think a lot of our problem here is boils down to presence and finance. That's what we need to work on. Presence, I commend you guys because I bought the old cabins over in Locke, the old labor camp down there. I run a lot of crackheads out. I tore a bunch of them down. I don't have no more drug problems, thanks to the mayor, wherever the hell he went. And other officers, you know, that's what we got to work on. You know, and I think the biggest thing is, what my biggest issue is, I own 2 companies here in town. I own properties here in town. And I was born and raised here. And I think the biggest problem is the drugs and the thieving. And they both go together.
Right.
We can't ask you guys to come out and be here all the time. The budget ain't there. So I remember in Lockford, about 40 years ago, I'll show my age, about 40 years ago, we had the same problem in Sacramento County. We had the same problem. We ended up, Clements, Lockford, and I forget Burson, I think it was, the next one up. We ended up, the community ended up paying wage for 2 officers. So we paid extra tax. If I remember right, I can find out exactly how we did it. But I remember we paid for the 2 officers that were there. And they only covered a certain amount of area. Well, then the thieves and this and that started getting used to, okay, he's here at this time, so we'll do this. So then we went to him and got it to where he kept switching up. He changed back and forth, and it worked really good for us. But the problem here is, you know, you guys talk about the homeless and all that. I feel sorry for people that are homeless. Some of them I don't. You know, and the ones I'm dealing with over there majority of them are young kids. But they just don't give a damn anymore. There's no respect for the law. There's no respect for your neighbor. There's no respect for anything. That's what I feel we need to issue on. The traffic thing is, we're getting all these people from Sacramento that are working in the Bay Area. We're getting them all going like a bat out of hell, coming out of Antioch and the Bay Area. This is their back way to go home instead of getting jammed up on 12 and 5. That's where we're getting it all coming through here. But it boils back down to, you know, she could sit there and throw rocks at cars all day long. It ain't gonna do no good. It's presence. So what I'd like to get out of this meeting is, how can we help with the funds, or how can we help with getting more presence? Presence stops crime, no matter what you do to us. If a guy, either you guys or a guy sitting on the front porch with his shotgun and his beer and his light on all night long, it's going to stop somebody from coming to.
There are neighborhood communities in the county that do pay for their own off-duty programs. You know, I'm not here to advocate for that because, I mean, obviously in a perfect world, you wouldn't need to pay for additional law enforcement resources. And I'd really like to try and work on that without having to burden you. But just to be candid with you, there are neighborhoods that do pay for, and they'll do it tailor it to the times and the places that is most effective. If the crime is happening certain days of the week, certain times of the night, then you could have that deterrent effect, and then when it starts getting moved around, just be agile with the resources. So there are programs like that exist. I mean, that's something that you can talk about amongst yourselves, and we can certainly provide information. And it's not cheap, but it is effective. But again, not trying to push that, or not even trying to say that that's what's going to be necessary, but as a kind of a back burner, sort of keep in the back of your mind, and maybe as a separate venue to explore. It does exist. Those models do exist.
I know you're kind of getting nasty in here for a bad force of words, but
Did everybody watch my hearing last night? This is nothing. No, but no, I appreciate it. I mean, that's why I'm down here. I didn't expect to come down and everybody tell me what a great job we're doing. The folks that thinks we're doing a great job didn't see the need to come here tonight, so I knew what I was getting, and I don't mind at all. This is exactly what I want to hear. So
I just believe that you guys need to be, whatever the word is there, for you guys being here. I've noticed a big difference since these meetings started. I've noticed a big difference of more patrol, more presence, and for choice of bad words, crackheads are going down. It's not as bad as it used to be almost a year ago, 6 months ago. So I want to congratulate you guys on what you're doing.
I appreciate
And
that.
you're doing what you can do.
As I always say, generally speaking, criminals are stupid and they're lazy. So, if you can make it more difficult for them or take measures to outsmart them, then they will go to the path of least resistance, which is hopefully out of your area and somewhere else. So, yes.
You brought last night up, I didn't. So. I didn't see all of it, but I saw part of it. I want to commend you on the way you handled yourself, because they threw some reading there. I stick in town a lot, but I do go to Elk Grove. My one day in the city is Tuesdays.
And Elk Grove is the city.
Elk Grove is the city, but there isn't a time that I do take Twin Cities Road, but it's not during commute time. There isn't hardly a time that I'm not coming or going. I don't see at least one sheriff's car going in or out. Almost every time that I'm going out that way, I see somebody coming in or I see somebody going out. So I do know that they're down here. In fact, the other day I was talking to one of my neighbors, with one of your guys who was driving by. So I know you're down here every day. It's just that, you're not here when the dump stuff.
I was going to say, my inclination is that the presence and the actual, spending time is getting better.
Yeah.
But that's maybe a different question than, is it the most effective times and the most effective manner? And those are issues we can explore.
Right. And I know, in a perfect world, we could have a deputy assigned to us, 3 deputies, an 8-hour shift, and the service center would be open 24 hours a day. It's not a perfect world.
Try and get funding for that.
I think, all in all, considering the resources and everything that's happened, but I think you guys are doing a pretty good job.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it doesn't take away from anything else. I do appreciate you saying so. Yes.
Okay, I have some action items for you. First, it starts at the top, Sheriff. We know that you're a good guy. We voted for you. We support you. That's obvious. What we need you to do is to make the lieutenants and the sergeants and the deputies understand that coming out to the Delta is not a life sentence. It's not a shaming. It's not being given a demerit, okay? Because everybody rolls their eyes, just like you said, oh, it takes so long to get out here. Well, yeah, that's why the bad guys know how long that it takes you to get out here. And that's why we all are really trying to express that issue to you. So reinvent the service center. Figure out a way to staff it 3 days a week during school hours. Get creative. We don't care. Have that presence. Right now, it's a clubhouse for the deputies to eat their sandwich from Mel's and do the reports. That's not cutting it. We need a presence. We need to be able to go in and talk to somebody, not pick up the phone and be a widget, okay? We want having that contact, having that presence. We keep talking about the presence. You've got the facility.
So I'll tell you a little about service centers, and that changed a lot, obviously. All the service centers closed when we had our layoffs. When I became, and that was in 2009, when I became sheriff in 2010, it was important to me, and the economy was still terrible. We still had people that were laid off. We didn't lay anybody additional off, but it was still very bad, as you all remember. So, but I very much felt like the service centers were a connection to each of the communities, and not just this community, but whether it's Carmichael or Wilton and some of the more outlying areas, certainly, but no less so for Fair Oaks or Carmichael or wherever. But I set some parameters up that, number one, we couldn't take resources to the service centers away from patrol. That was our function. We had to be able to answer calls for service. And so my strategy for service centers has been and still remains that we will work hard to put service centers in, but we are not going to pay rent. We will pay utilities, but we're not going to pay rent. And we can't pay staff. So in other words, they're going to be staffed generally with volunteers. Now, we could have paid presence intermittently or periods of time during the week, but we cannot dedicate full-time staff to the service center. So I would say that if there's an interest, desire to maybe have some presence in that service center, then I would implore folks to explore possibly volunteering in that manner, volunteering with the Sheriff's Department for that purpose. We have volunteer training and everything else. We could certainly explore having that, and then having maybe more regular times for the deputies, so folks can know they can come in certain days and times of the week, perhaps, unless there's something else going on. But maybe Wednesday mornings they generally know they could come in and talk to a deputy, but they would have a presence, maybe not full time, but they'd have a presence there most of the week. But it would be a volunteer presence. But it could also be a place where they do reports, but it's also a place where folks know they can. It used to be donut shops, right? That's where we got the reputation for eating donuts, because that used to be the only thing open 24 hours a day. So they would always go there and do reports and so on and so forth. Probably eat donuts too, but I'm trying to be defensive here. But now the service centers, so they go there too, but that doesn't mean we can't have a volunteer presence that also can provide services, everything from how to stop your newspaper if you're going on vacation to how to put in a PR or a patrol request to go by if you're away from vacation. But we have volunteers in every one of our service centers. So if that's something that there's a desire, an interest, a hunger for down here, then we can certainly explore it.
The other thing is, we did have that other meeting. I think people got a little discouraged that things aren't moving as fast as they thought that they heard the promises made. So we'd like you to come back next quarter with your results, hopefully more than one phone call, and give us a report on how you're protecting us and how your health and safety issues are being addressed. And give us your data so that we know what you've been up to, so that we can then give you a report card on, yeah, we agree, or no, that hasn't been addressed. Because this is supposed to be a dialogue, an ongoing communication with the communities. And you're our guardian. We don't have a police department. We have a wonderful volunteer fire department, and God knows that they've done above and beyond a lot of times. But, You need to know that we want you to be here and come and report back to us. And don't forget about us, and don't just give us lip service, really.
I promise you, I'll come back. If you want me to come back, I'll come back. If I'm still sheriff, that is. I understand Marcus Bertone called for a recall vote this morning, so we'll see how that goes.
As far as some ideas that are specific to your community.
Thank you. Where'd you get this?
I'm sorry,
Is this
go ahead.
CHP?
Lori, you speak on it.
Okay.
They're amazing, hardworking, completely dedicated, and they live in your community. So they're here tonight to represent.
See how fast I work?
Well, thank you. My name is Doris Specht, and I am one of your VIP volunteers. I have put in over 500 hours to this community to volunteer to try and help you if you call the service center. Bruce and I were in the same academy. He's a retired police officer, so he's really good. And he does vacation patrols where he'll go rattle your door and see if everything's locked. He has been known to set off a few alarms. But anyway, but we're here. We would encourage any of you that have time, a few hours a week, to volunteer with us. And it's 5 weeks of training, excellent training. You find out about senior fraud. You find out about how they like to take the catalytic converters off of Dodge Ram trucks and Toyotas, I think it is, something like that, because they're easy to get off. But anyway, I have a suggestion, and I've heard this through the grapevine, that Yolo County has installed a camera on the Freeport Bridge, and they did it because the thieves that were stealing the cars in Sac County would drive across the bridge and they would dump the cars in Yolo County on the river, and Yolo County had to retrieve the cars and so on. And the crime was coming over from Sacramento. Is there any reason why we can't have cameras installed on the Paintersville Bridge, the Walnut Grove Bridge, the Georgiana Bridge, and the Ileton Bridge? Because the technology, as I understand it, and we see it up at the big shopping center in Sacramento, the security guys run around and they take pictures of all the license plates. Well, the thing... It's your camera? Oh, okay.
We want a couple.
But anyway, if the crime is happening on Grand Island, there's only a couple ways for them to get off. They go across the ferry, or they have to go across the bridges. It's an island. So one of the old timers told me that a long time ago, when there was something going on, they'd call all the bridges and they just raise all the bridges.
Yeah, but now they get stuck.
They did that.
Absolutely, yeah, that is our Sheriff's Department camera, LPR camera. You know, we talk about, quickly about, we want a camera in, right? And we, trust me, we put in, I know Sergeant Rogers was influential about getting that in there. We have to find out where we draw power from, and sometimes if it's a certain utility companies, I will not dime them out, but they don't want to let us do it because they feel it's a violation of civil rights, and we're getting public access camera photos. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles. I would love all of you to do that. So, no, but in all, and please let me finish up. Right. Even better. But the reality is it takes us a long time to get there, a lot of hurdles. Assemblyman Fraser has been instrumental trying to help us out. I know Supervisor Natoli tried to fund a pole with electricity to it so it can actually keep it on. So there are ways, and we're looking at better ways, because you're absolutely right. If we can capture a plate and somebody's got a description, we put that together, we will be able to apprehend more people. And we are sympathetic to the East Bay traffic coming in for different areas. Little City Ileton right now, as you know, has approved dispensaries and cultivation, and we understand that that's going to morph into other areas. It's just, there's certain crimes that come with that, so we're cognizant of it, we're working at it, but it does take time to get the right key partners there to let it happen for us to put them on bridges, and that's it. But we are looking at better ways of getting those down.
We're very aggressive on LPR. In fact, there's certain periods of time where we capture the most license plate images of any agency in the country. And that all is part of the data that goes into this analytic machine. Again, not that you care, but I told you I'd get back to you.
So have you seen drug arrest increase in this area?
Give me a second, but I can answer that back. Okay. I would say right now, it's your 2018 statistics, just as we say statistics, so everybody understands this. I'm sorry, I wish I had my glasses. There were a total of 1,220 calls for service. Of those calls, 723, appreciate you, self-initiated. So again, that goes to that proactivity, right? So you got 57 or 59% were self-initiated. Your top calls for service in 2018, burglary alarm calls were 97. Incomplete phone calls were 77. General information, meaning informational reports, no crime attached to it. It's just kind of an FYI. Welfare check are 24 calls. Suspicious vehicle occupied, being someone's just parked there that probably doesn't look like they belong there, 17. Suspicious circumstances, similar, maybe someone arguing possibly a fight, maybe look like they're going to break into their business, 14. Burglary report to a dwelling, 14. Disturbance, just at 4:15 arguing, maybe or loud noise, 14 calls. And suspicious subject, someone walking in the area that doesn't, probably not from here, but just walking down the area, 13 calls. And assist outside agency, and that could be a fire, ambulance, and or CHP call, 12. Those are your top 2018 calls for service. And the narcotics calls, in those proactive, we can maybe track some of the stats. If we did a vehicle stop, had conditions to be able to search, and we find something, we can probably report back that too.
So right now, people aren't being arrested down here for drug use or at this point?
Where are those
Pardon?
stats from?
And a lot, remember, the decriminalization of a lot of those crimes are all misdemeanors. So not a lot of arrests are maybe citations.
I have a woman who allegedly, her baby's been taken away. And so I'm going to watch this woman, I'm going to watch the vehicles that come and go because she doesn't have her child back. And I'm going to call you with the license plate because I'm concerned.
Yeah, we'll get the central pop numbers,
Okay.
and we'll get you those, because if you don't have to go through the comm center, we want you to if it's a call for service, an active call for service, but if it's information for follow-up, call the pop team and they'll be able to follow up.
And I don't know if I could talk to one officer to see if okay.
We'll have someone for you tonight.
And just, so if you were going to fund another officer down here for 6 months, would that be helpful to fund one more officer in this area for 6 months?
Well, I'm not sure I'd recommend that exactly.
What would you recommend?
I would recommend, I'd want to look at the data. I would want it to be data-driven in terms of where they're needed, what times they're needed, and I'd rather be a little bit more surgical in how we deploy it. So if it was going to be a 6-month, or let's say one half of one full-time position for one half of 1 year of a full-time equivalent position, I'd want to figure out how to kind of amortize that over an effective period in an effective way. So
So to get it into the budget, because the budget.
well, we can't really budget half an officer, to be honest with you, so it'd be an additional officer and a vehicle, which, you know, it's not cheap, but like I said, the county,
You want to throw a figure?
I'd be a bit remiss. I'm going to say fully loaded, salary, benefits, carb, deputy, full-time,
Tinted windows,
250, 300,000?
300,000?
Yeah,
For 6 months?
per year, each year, per year. Yeah, so, you know, it's a lot of money. That's more than just couch cushion money, but the county, like I said, the county picture continues to improve, just like the state and everybody else. So it's not an unreasonable. I can tell you that we've had very much, for the first several years of my tenure as sheriff, we didn't have any growth, and I didn't ask for any. We just kind of refigured and did kind of, we worked inwardly. We have had growth over the last few years, and so we are getting growth, not just the additional cost of doing business, but growth in certain areas that are priorities. So the county is able to fund growth, and if that was what comes out, I mean, it's obviously too preliminary to say that that's what's going to help us at this point. Certainly can't hurt, but I don't want that to be our first go-to, just getting another deputy. But if that's something, I don't mind having that conversation. It sounded like Supervisor Natoli was open to it. At least you made him seem like he was open to it, which is good. Yes.
If any of you sheriffs have Facebook pages, there's like 3 that I know of, local Facebook pages that are always, one is called Delta Concerns Facebook page, another is Delta News Facebook page, the third is Walnut Grove Hub that I'm aware of. And there's more crimes that are reported on those Facebook pages by the people in the community.
We generally monitor all of those for each of our communities, including this one, but I mean.
So in the department, we have 12 crime analysts who, we have regular social media type software that runs that type of stuff and looks for those type of things. A lot of times I'll see something on Facebook or something that I get sent from a citizen. By the way, I'm chief deputy, I'm Phil Brelge. He's my boss, I'm in charge of everybody else up here. So,
I forgot to, my apologies.
so that social media type information, a lot of times when I get information from the community or something that emails me, I will email the crime analyst, they've already seen it and are already working on it to get that type of information out. So social media is a very powerful, powerful tool for us.
Okay, good to know. Also, in the last few years, I've noticed that the traffic, or the rush hour traffic on River Road here in front of Locke and Walnut Grove there's two waves of it. One starts at 4:45 and goes to about 5:15. The next starts at 5:30 and goes to about 6 or 6:15. And those cars do not slow down for the 35-mile-an-hour zone. They're going by 70, 80 miles an hour.
Well, I mean, it just sounds to me, and I'm no CHP guy, but I mean, it just sounds to me like with some random targeted enforcement over, periods of time, then it does affect traffic patterns. I mean, but you have to you can't just do it once because it'll slowly go back to the way it was. But, they're pros in that. So, I mean, if I can impress upon them the need and the priority for that, I think they can make a difference in that.
I can talk on Twin Cities Road. I live on Twin Cities Road, and I live right by the suicide turn there between the Orphan Bridge and the Sacramento River. Since a meeting we had 3 weeks ago, we had 3 wrecks on that turn. I've been complaining for 2 years on that turn there. I mean, it's almost impossible sometimes to get out of our driveway. The guys, and I live there, so we see them pass, but going to the turn from west to east. We see them passing, going from east to west. I see them passing just before they go over the bridge. And nothing's been done. It's got to be done today. I mean, as you guys know, that's probably have more wrecks there than any place in the Delta. And yet nothing's been done. We can hardly get out of our driveway sometimes. And when we try to get out of our driveway, sometimes the cars are coming this way, there's 5 or 6 or 7. Some guy thinks he can pass them all. And we get out of the driveway, we just got to go on top of our side and get out of the way. I mean, it's terrible. Twin Cities Road is terrible. I've been there for 50 years. I've seen them coming down at 70, 80 miles an hour. I mean, they just really pour down that thing. And if you don't do something on that Twin Cities Road for the double yellow line and enforce it, I mean, it's not going to get any better. The guys that live down here know that turn there, know how bad it is. But the guys that come from San Francisco or Sacramento, they don't. In the last, I don't know how many guys I pulled out of the orchard, that ran in the orchard, or guys that went over on the other side and were killed and got in big wrecks. But nothing's being done about that turn. I mean, it's like it doesn't exist.
Well, the double yellow line the supervisor talked about at the start.
Yeah,
if it slows us down.
We've been talking about double yellow line for a year and it's still not there.
I get it. I mean, believe me, I'll be conveying the appropriate level of passion when I speak with the CHP.
Today, when you guys go back Twin Cities. You're going to know.
Whatever way Waze tells me to go. I will go back. That's the way I will go back. Twin Cities. I'll pay attention to it because I can't picture in my mind's eye what he's talking about, but I will pay attention to it going back.
On that corner, you can see where all the cars and trucks have gone off that road, missed it, and went through the cornfield.
Do about 9
Yeah,
west.
it's ridiculous. It's nuts. Which way they're going.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. That's the way I'm going back. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
We were one of the companies that broke into on Walnut Grove Thornton Road, Galindo Construction. And we had a call out 2 weeks ago where we found out later on that a lady had boarded my tugboat and the patio boat, had untied them and started floating downriver. We found out that she was mentally ill later on. I got to commend your officers. You guys got there quicker than I ever thought you, but I got to commend the fire department. They got there with the boat and helped me retrieve both vessels from floating in river. Whoa! But that being said, I was talking with the officer. I got laid some news that they had found the people that had broken into my yard.
Oh, yay.
Well, you would think yay. But it's not, this is not a happy ending. He also told me that the district attorney denied to prosecute because there wasn't enough evidence. Now, I haven't heard back from the district attorney. Phone call into him, but haven't heard back from him yet. But I could hear the frustration in your officer's voice. They had caught the guy was released, and he is now on the run. He has a warrant out for his arrest. But I could hear that frustration in his voice, and he knew that I was going to go ballistic when he told me. Daniel knew that. But this seems to be happening more and more and more, is that you guys are catching the guys, but we're seeing these same guys come back. And I need to know which one of you do I talk to give you license numbers, because I'm that guy that people see driving around at 1, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, taking these license plate numbers down of where they're at. But I want to know which one I give all this information that I have, I give to you, so you can chase them down.
We also have a submitted tip online, so if you do get on, you go in and you want to be anonymous with your name, I know you're not maybe afraid to do so, but if you can put it with the activity, then we can track it through our intelligence.
I would rather give it to somebody eye to eye, hand to hand, so we know what's going on. Because right now, as we sit here and we talk, I can take an officer and we're going to go find one of the guys. And he's a problem child in this area. And Miss Lily, well, she's gone now, but that's been a great resource, the community resource, and that has kind of dwindled away. But I think we need to get back to more of that community, feet down on the ground, getting people out there to see what's going on. Because I know it's hard for you guys to get down here. It's a big, tough deal.
Nor we want to do it on our own. And you can't do it on your own. And so somewhere in between, there's a right combination of cooperation. I mean, there's a quote I always say, and it sounds a little corny, but I absolutely believe it. It's, a community will suffer the level of crime that it's willing to tolerate, right? And so that has a lot of really nuance to it. It's folks such as yourselves taking care of your own properties, your own issues, each other's properties and each other's issues, but that's also doing things just like tonight. It's showing up and trying to engage the folks that have a piece of that public safety as well, which is us. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know that I felt that frustration in his voice. And, you know, down here, our first call is, you know, my first call wasn't to the sheriff's department when that lady, which I didn't know, I thought it was a theft at the time. My first call wasn't to the sheriff's department. It was for the fire department to get them going, because they're the closest ones to me. But I do have to say that you guys did make it down here in pretty much record time, so.
Yes.
Just a really simple question. I walk my dog every night, and one night I was out walking by the Presbyterian church like I do, and there were 3 characters out behind the church in the little kids' play area. They were as tall as I was, so I didn't want to confront them. And I sat there, and for the longest time, I just wondered, who should I call at 10 o'clock at night? Is this a 911? I mean, I couldn't tell they were doing anything dangerous or destroying any property, but I didn't know what to do.
You can always err on the side of calling us, and if it's not 911, obviously the non-emergency number. You know, some of the questions that probably the call taker is going to ask is, you know, what they're doing that might be suspicious, and so you want to be able to articulate that, not necessarily that they're doing activities, but the time, place, and manner and where they are. That's a place where they aren't normally people. I walk by a dog bay every night. There's never anybody there. There's 3 people here. It's unusual. So you have to be able to think a little bit ahead to say articulate what is suspicious about it. And who knows? Maybe we already have someone in the area that it'd be no big deal for us to go by. You know, maybe we've got somebody that's only 45 minutes away, and that it'll get in the queue, but on a very low priority. We'll never get there. But you don't know.
Yeah.
So I would always recommend you let us know. And
What
plus,
is
you
that
don't know
phone number?
The non-emergency, the 5115 number.
874-5115.
I'm sorry, yeah, 916-874-5115.
5-1.
And you don't know because you could call and you could say, you know what, there's nothing really suspicious about that, but we had a burglary up in Hood earlier, and somebody saw 3 people running away. You just don't know how your piece of information interconnects with all the other information. So I'd always err on the side of calling, even if we don't respond, even if there's no crime, even if you think, it seems silly. You all know what's out of the ordinary and suspicious in your neighborhood, often far better than we do going through it. I mean, we think everything's suspicious, but you really truly know what's out of place and out of the ordinary in your neighborhood. So
What was that number again?
874
874
5115
515. And what area code is that?
916.
And are they there? Is somebody there at 10
24/7.
o'clock at night? Okay.
That's our comm center.
Okay.
So we always have call takers and dispatchers there.
I just wanted to comment before I left that I really was proud that you were my sheriff, the way you reported yourself last night. That was really fun. Thank you.
All right, wait, oh, yes, sir.
I'm Jim Henry from F&M Bank, and we recently purchased. Right, yeah, just down the street.
I drove by that today, I'm thinking, what if that gets robbed? So now you
Well,
They were robbed.
They were robbed. So, from a selfish standpoint, we have the entire basement, the back area of that ranch, that is unoccupied. We would be more than happy to open it up for free, to have your officers have desks. We have enough desks to have every officer standing behind you with a desk. I know you already have a service center, but there's available space that you could have staff, you could have people there. I can't imagine someone robbing a bank that would have a bunch of officers on the and so it works perfect for us.
That's a black eye on us too.
But that space is available for free.
Well, I appreciate that, and certainly I don't know enough as I stand up here to know what what our needs are and what our abilities are to expand for the service area, but I appreciate that, and I'm sure the people behind me are hearing it, so I appreciate it. Well, like I know everybody's taken up a good part of their evening, and I appreciate it. I know that you have varying degrees of confidence or faith that anything's going to change from this meeting. Again, I would just implore you, give me an opportunity to go back and talk with my folks, talk with some of the relevant other stakeholders, CHP and perhaps the county folks, and let's see if we can. And, you know, I'm not going to create a panacea for you. I'm not going to be able to get everything we want, but that's not to say we can't do something better and something that is a little, at least less frustrating for you. So, again, thanks everybody for taking up part of their evening. I hope it was worthwhile.
Thank you for listening.
We have some officers that are willing to answer any questions you might have for afterwards.